Welcome to Kolor Me Mama. I am the HMIC head mama in charge and your host, Ashley Shante. This is the very first episode of Kolor Me Mama, and hopefully there will be many more episodes to come. If you are a black mother, a future black mother, a black auntie, or a black woman that just lives her life against and outside of society's constructs and rule books, and you color outside the lines a little bit, this may be the place for you. I invite you to stay, kick back, and listen. I'm aware that there are only 76 gazillion podcasts out there, but none of them are hosted by me. And I have to tell myself that in order to big myself up with the confidence boost that I need to be able to just step out and do this. I'll let you know a little bit about who I am, and hopefully there's something that I do say that resonates with you that makes you decide to stay. I'm a wife, an alternative mom of two divine boys, 1 and 3 years old. I'll get into what I mean by alternative momming shortly. Right now, I'm recording this episode from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, but I am a Black American. I loosely started this journey in 2021 during the pandemic in Mexico as an Instagram page. And I remember exactly where I was when it was planted in my heart. I was in Playa del Carmen on a very busy street, but I was tucked away in this dreamy Spanish-style villa, and I was sitting by the plunge pool. My oldest was 10 months at the time, and he was taking a nap inside with my husband, when I got a DM from another black mama that I know that said, "How do you travel with your baby, especially right now? I am so scared."
And the word scared really rang in my mind and in my spirit, because I completely understood her fear. However, spiritually, I had been totally free from that fear about 2 months prior. Ironically, through tragedy, my dearest friend, my maternal grandmother, Graham, had passed away unexpectedly due to COVID complications, or at least that's what the hospital said, but that's a different story and an episode for another day.
We buried my grandmother, and then my grandfather died the day after her funeral of a broken heart. My grandparents were only mid-70s. This completely devastated me and shifted my world. It shifted everything I believed and I thought I knew before. These were my parents. They were very impactful in my life and a huge part of raising me. I pretty much went numb.
And by far, it's the greatest pain I have ever endured. And so where before this happened, I was much more of an eggshell mom about COVID, concerning my baby, because Bridge, my oldest, my firstborn, he had been in the NICU for 3 weeks after he was born. And this was pretty much the scariest time of the pandemic. This was when people thought, if the wind blew too hard on you, you were going to catch it. And so after my gram had passed, I had less fear, because I was like, well, what the hell is the point of the fear? Because if you could love someone so deeply like that, I was so close to my grandmother. She called me her heartstring, and we were just kindred spirits. And so I felt like if I could just lose someone that I loved like that so abruptly, I had already lost so much. And so, to be honest, I was too numb to be afraid. Like I said, my first child, Bridge, had been in the NICU for 3 weeks. I would not wish the NICU on my worst enemy. It is a scary time for any parent, but especially a mom with hospital anxiety. And not only did I have hospital anxiety, but I was facing this hospital anxiety, the NICU, something that I've never had to deal with, during a global pandemic where my husband was not allowed to go and with an unhealed body. This was still at the time when there was a mandated curfew. Now about my unhealed body. So my entire birth plan was changed just 3 weeks before my due date. I was diagnosed with preeclampsia. I was kicked out of the birth center that I was planning to have this peaceful water birth at. I had spent my entire pregnancy going to that place for checkups and built a relationship with those midwives. And then 3 weeks before, boom, I have preeclampsia. This was a high-risk pregnancy. I needed to have a C-section. Yada, yada. My son was born at 3 pounds, 10 ounces. Thank God I had my dear husband there holding my hand throughout each step, and he was there. But once I was discharged from the hospital, I was the only parent allowed to visit the NICU. Now, the policy was any parent could visit, but it had to be only one parent. And obviously, in that case, that was me, the mom, the one with the boobs, the breastfeeder. So this whole experience on top of the pandemic sent me into postpartum depression. And the lights had just come back on for me mentally after 8 months of being in this kind of dark space. And then my grandmother passed. So after this, I'm just giving you context because I just felt so free to just go anywhere in the world. It had like loosened me in some way because I felt like I had already been through hell. That month period of time that my family and I stayed in Playa del Carmen in 2021, it was lovely. And it was lovely by choice because I chose to block out the noise. There were certainly naysayers. There were whispers from my family in full, some people had bullhorns, just full out saying, "You're an irresponsible mom, you're endangering your child, you're taking him to dangerous COVID-infested Mexico, you are not vaccinated, yeah. I was shamed." Guess what? Spoiler alert, we were safe. We basically lived a bougie local life in Mexico. And I'm emphasizing bougie because we did live as locals, but not as natives, if that makes sense. We lived more like expats. We frequented the same restaurants. We developed a favorite coffee shop. We met friends. We had conversations with locals and other expats. Now, this would have been a bomb trip with just my husband, but having our child there made it more of a dream come true, especially for me, because when I found out that I was pregnant with Bridge, I told my husband one of my biggest dreams for him was to know, as a Black boy who will eventually become a Black man, that he could go anywhere in the world. America's depiction of him will not define him. And I felt like I had put a brick into that foundation of that dream, and COVID was not going to stop me. I created for Black moms to be inspired and informed and have a buddy to let them know, hey girl, it's safe. You can do that thing. You can go to that place. Maybe this thing that you want to do, you haven't done it before, but someone out there has, and here's a handbook on it. Go ahead, mom, outside of that rule book that society has created for you, and whatever that means for you. We'll have a strong arm in travel and living abroad. We will also discuss alternative medicine, homeschooling, unique choices in general, and just ways Black moms can be inspired and know that there are ways to successfully raise your children outside of mainstream's rule book. Before I go any further, I do want to thank my husband for encouraging me to do this podcast. He has been telling me to do a podcast for 10 years. Sadly, I'm just listening. Thanks, babe. So on momming high, right? I'm definitely a mom who colors outside of the lines, but I didn't just magically arrive to this place. I am a mom and a wife, but I've lived way more life as a single individual before being a wife and mama, even though it does seem like forever ago. I believe my life before is an amalgamation of the type of mother that I am now. I feel like the way I operate in my motherhood, my mothership, it's a gumbo of my own childhood, of the way I was raised, of the places I grew up in, and my experiences. I'm an 80s baby from Hartford, Connecticut. What up, Hartford? I spent all of my summers up until I was about 16 in Winsboro, South Carolina, with my maternal grandparents and my great grandma. So I'm an old soul, and elders are certainly my vibe. That's my vibe, okay? Um, I went to high school in Metro Atlanta, and I spent most of all of my 20s in New York City, which I call the golden years. They were equally golden and tragic, but I guess that's what the 20s are for, right? Then I lived in LA after that, and that's really where I fine-tuned my career and I started my family. I now reside in North Carolina, sort of, but it's still a TBD, and we've been traveling for the last 5 months. So, yeah. I grew up in a single mother household. My mother had me at 23. She worked full time and went to school full time to become a registered nurse. So she did this at the same time, working full time and a full time student. God bless you, Mom. Uh, I have mostly fond memories of my childhood. That's when my relationship with my mom was at its closest. We had lots of fun and we kind of grew up together in a way. I think some of the things that I experienced as a child were equally a blessing as they were traumatic. And because my mom worked so much, I spent a lot of my time elsewhere. I am, or I was, certainly one of those kids that was raised by a village. I do remember waking up at times and having to quickly like do the mental gymnastics and calculations of where am I? Because my mom worked the night shift, it meant that I often slept over other people's houses. So that was friends of hers, family members, neighbors, etc. And one time in particularly, I woke up to people standing over me. There were like two women that I had never seen before standing over me. I remember being put to bed in my Bart Simpson room. And my mom kissing me goodnight. And yeah, went to bed. But when I woke up, these two women, neither one of them was my mom or anyone that I had ever seen before. And I just remember them saying, "Oh, honey, your mom's going to be back. She had to go to work." Now, mind you, not only are these two women people I haven't seen before, I'm also not in my house. So I'm in a home that I've never seen or been before. And I'm with people I've never been around. And I think at this point, I was at least about 5 or 6 years old, and I had watched way too much America's Most Wanted. Yes. And so I was pretty confident that I had been kidnapped. But, kids are so resilient because even though I felt like I had been kidnapped, in some way I was like, okay, I got to play this real cool. And, they had told me, your mom will be back by 5:30, something like that. They said. I definitely kept looking at the clock. Those 8 hours that passed felt like 24 hours. But they were right. They were not kidnappers or anything. My mom did come back. And turns out, guess what? I was closer to home than I thought. I was exactly across the hall. We lived in a very large apartment complex, and this happened to be the neighbor that lived across the hall. It just turns out that I just never had any interactions with her. I don't remember her, but my mom knew her because she also happened to be my mom's coworker. She worked at the hospital with my mom. I think she had newly moved into our apartment, so that's why I didn't know her. And so, that's one of the challenges of being a single Black mother. And I want to emphasize Black mother because not only being a single mother, but Black, she did not feel like she could say no when she got that call from the hospital. She was trying to climb the ladder. I'm trying to keep my job, so I need to say yes. And so she scooped me out of my bed and put me in Miss Gloria's bed. And yes, that was it. But I'd be lying if I said that those experiences did not stay with me, right? Which is part of the reason why I have my children with me more than I don't. My children have never been to daycare. I've only had nannies where I've pretty much created environments with my children that I have full control over. And I know that is partly because that ingredient of trauma in there about maybe not always feeling safe. And, where my mom did not have full control over her schedule and, where I was at all times. I want to have that with my children. And so that's one reason why I operate the way that I do. Even much so, like I told you all, and, with my career, so fine tuning my career. So when I first moved to LA, I had taken a break from acting. It's been a pretty long break, about a 10-year plus break. Another episode, right? So I leaned more into my producing, writing, directing, where I was spending 12-hour days on sets was my norm. And in the back of my mind, I always knew that if I wanted to have a family in the way that I want to be a mom, that wasn't going to work where I didn't have full control over my schedule. But that's a part of, like I said, the gumbo of the type of mom that I am. On the positive side of that, being in all of those different environments were my peek into the globe. Though I didn't travel internationally as a kid, it kind of felt like I did because my hood was so international. I had West Indian godparents. I had Puerto Rican and Dominican teachers, babysitters. As far as church is concerned, I have gone to every denomination and religious building there is, just because I, had babysitters that practiced different religions. I had Nigerian neighbors, just you name it. It was really like this melting pot of what our globe looks like, but all in this one space that I lived. I consider myself an alternative mom, but not because I became a mom and decided, I'm going to try to be cool and different. I've just always been an alternative person. And what I mean by that is I am not a choose A, B, or C type of girl. It's just not the way I'm wired. And to be honest, more times than not, I wish I was because life probably would maybe be less complicated, but I'm just not. And my first experience of that I really remember where it had a big impact on my life was in high school. So my high school at the time was a choose A or a B type of diploma. You could either choose a college prep diploma or you could choose a technical diploma. This was the beginning of my junior year of high school, and where I needed to choose my classes for senior year. And so I was already on the college prep track. And I was really struggling in math, partly because I just was very uninterested in the type of math I was doing. As a creative mind, I think I couldn't quite understand, why am I going to need this? This is not something I need. I don't need trigonometry. Why do I need to learn this? So, anywho, I was really struggling, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to continue down this track. And I know it's going to be a really hard senior year if I do trig, but I knew the domino effect of that meant that I was not going to be on what they consider the college prep route for that diploma. So the other route, the B route, was a technical diploma, which that's when, like, for part of your day, you either drove, I guess, yeah, junior year we drove. So you drove to another school and you spent about 2 hours there, where you would either do cosmetology or like auto workshops. Those were kind of the main choices. And mainly they sent the black kids there. That's another episode, a different day. But I knew that didn't work for me either, because I wasn't interested in doing cosmetology and I wasn't interested in being a mechanic. So, Houston, we have a problem. So I go to my guidance counselor and, I'm telling him, I'm not really sure what to do, because this trig, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. And then, so he quite naturally just said, oh, okay, well, yeah, you can do the technical route. I told him, yeah, I don't want to do that either. And, God bless this man, seriously, because this is definitely at a time, well, I'm saying at the time, I don't believe nothing's changed because I still hear about it, but definitely where these white guidance counselors were always trying to like detour black kids into some BS, basically. And he didn't do that. He pulled out this like huge book. I think it was like the county rule book curriculum thing, whatever. It just looked like the Bible times 8. Like, it was just this like big thick book, and he was like looking through it, and then he was checking back and cross-referencing it with my current like class roster, and he looked at it and looked at it, and he was like, oh, you really like theater, huh? I see that you like have been doing theater your whole time since you've been here. All your extracurricular activities are all musical theater, or acting in some way, or music class. And so I said, yeah. And so he said, well, there is this rule, and he was like, this very fine print that most people don't look at, that if you spend a concentrated amount of time in any particular area in high school, that they could really curate your diploma for that area. And he said, you know what? You could actually get a performing arts diploma. Of course, I still had to take my academic courses, but I didn't have to take like some of the ones that I just felt like I was going to struggle with and didn't want to take. Like, obviously, I still took, language arts and history and whatever. As a creative, I was like an A+ student in history and language arts and all of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I created my own diploma, long story short. And I think I was the first person in the history of this county to have this diploma. But I give that example because so many times just in life, especially in America, you're given an A or B. And it's like, you either pick A or you pick B. And if you don't, then you're screwed. You go left or you go right. And many times there are so many people out there like me that feel like they don't fit in A and they don't fit in B, but they feel forced to choose. And I've just never operated that way. I don't force myself to do what my body and in my mind just don't agree with. And so, I've carried that with me in how I mother. There's usually 2 choices, and 3 if you're lucky. And that just doesn't work for me. And certainly that doesn't work for how I mother, because I want the very best for my children. And I'm not saying that choosing A or B are good or bad options, but sometimes that just might not be good or a bad option for the person that's doing the choosing. And so I really started this podcast in Mom High Club because I'm passionate about Black women, and I'm especially passionate about Black women that are mothers, and I know how challenging it is. It's already challenging just to be a mother, I can imagine, but I know how hard it is to be a Black mother, because it's hard as hell to just be Black. So when you put on top of it that you're raising Black people, uh, it ain't for the faint, for sure. And so I think a lot of times, because of the constraints of society, and they do not make it easy systemically, we do choose either A or B, because we know how challenging it is going to be if we do, say, hey, is P available? You know? And, but I just want to encourage you all that there is a way that can be done. And I wanted to create a community where we hold each other's hands, and we encourage each other, but also keep each other informed on how these things can be done. I moved to New York City at 18 for acting and film school, and I stayed there for all of my 20s to pursue my acting career. Now, if you've ever lived in New York City, it's certainly a place that, I don't think there is not a country or island unrepresented in the city of New York. And I'm just talking about the city alone, not even the whole state. Like, it truly is a melting pot of every nationality and ethnicity that you could dream of, right? And so as a struggling artist, I could barely afford my rent, let alone travel. And I did hang out with a group of friends that were not actresses, not struggling artists, and they had, careers and stuff, and they could travel. They could afford to travel, and they'd always tell me about their travels, and I'd be like, oh, one day I'm gonna do that when I can afford it. And so I also couldn't afford cable at the time either, and so Netflix was my choice of entertainment. And this was Netflix. I'm not talking about like what's your password Netflix. I'm talking about red envelope Netflix, that one, where they used to send you the little DVDs in the red envelopes. And I was naturally just really drawn to foreign films because as an actress, I really appreciated the authenticity of the work. But I also felt like I was like peeking into these worlds that I couldn't quite afford to go to yet. And I think it was really kind of that spark for me that, hey, there's a whole world out there that you need to see one day. And so I didn't really travel internationally, well, outside of Bahamas, if that counts. I didn't really travel internationally until I started dating my husband. And that's just when my life was in a different space. I had put acting on hold. And so I was much more free to travel. And to be honest, this is retrospective now that I think about it. I think why I was so ready and available to travel with my husband was because I now felt safe to travel with someone. This is no slight against anyone, that friends or anything that I knew in my 20s, but I don't think I truly felt safe to travel with anyone. You're traveling across the world. That's like a huge trust exercise for me. And so my husband was the first person I really trusted to do that with. And that was great. But I would say the trip that was really life-changing for me was Thailand. That's just like, there's a smile on my heart in like up where Thailand sits in my heart memory. Because I felt like it was a trip that really changed my life. It was a trip that was planned on a whim. I had just finished directing a project for BET, and I had some extra money and I had extra time. And I was like, let's go. And so my husband and I, he was still my boyfriend at this time, but we went to Thailand. And one memory in particularly we were on the beach at like the villa we were staying at, and I told my husband, "Oh, babe, I'm gonna walk out on the beach." He was sitting in a chair on the beach, and I just kind of started walking ahead, and I just got lost in collecting these seashells. It's like one of my favorite things to do. And I just got lost in collecting these seashells. And then I happened to look up, like to look back at my husband, and he was blurry because that's how far I had walked out. And my husband was like flailing his arms, and I could see he was just like, "Yo, what are you doing? Like, you're mad far." But I had realized in that moment I had no fear. Like I was just really free. And for the first time that I can remember, I didn't have that monster on my back. That monster on my back that's been there since I knew I was Black. That monster on my back when I walk into a certain store. And we're going to keep it all the way real. When I walk into an Asian store, right? Like a beauty supply store, there's a monster on my back that makes me feel like, oh, they may think I'm stealing. If you know y'all's history and our Asian and Black relations in the hood in America, just look up Latasha Harlins, and there's many more. And unfortunately, probably so many unnamed Latashas out there, right? But I was in Asia now, in real Asia, not Chinese America, not Korea America, not Thai America, in actual Thailand. And that monster was not on my back because the white gaze was not there. The racism was not present. The threat of gun violence wasn't there. I felt so gorgeous in Thailand. I even remember like actually a few women, like just Thai women, saying, "Your skin is so gorgeous." But it was probably the first time that I can remember that I just felt like Ashley. Not like, oh, Ashley the Black woman, or Ashley, Ashley that needs to speak truth to power, Ashley that needs to challenge the system. There was no system that I needed to think about. I just was free. And that was a real beautiful feeling that I knew that I wanted to. Not only did I want to, but I knew that I deserved to experience for the rest of my life. So I've always wanted to go to Africa. But it was a must for me to go to Africa once I had children. And so Mexico was like a test country for us traveling with Bridge. Like I said, Bridge was 10 months at the time. And it was like a test of like me being able to survive, my husband and I surviving being in another country with a baby. And with Thailand, an amateur mistake that I had made when I traveled there is I did not travel shamefully with like any like pain medicine, like no Motrin or Tylenol or anything like that. And I remember on one of our legs in the airports, like we were traveling to like a different part of Thailand, and I think I can't even remember what pain I had. It might have just been a headache. And I just couldn't find Tylenol anywhere. And not that they didn't have Tylenol, but obviously everything was in Thai. And this was before like the hacks where, now when you go somewhere, you could just like put the Google app up to like the ingredients or description of something and it'll translate for you. That wasn't available then, or it wasn't very well known about at that time. So I think when I went to Mexico and now with our son, I was like, there ain't no way I'm gonna be caught out there with not the right things that I need for him. So we brought everything but the kitchen sink. And then I got there and then I realized, girl, anywhere that you go that also has children, which means anywhere because there are children everywhere. And that's the thing, especially like American people will say, don't go there, it's dangerous. You're going to bring your kid there? How could you? And it's like, meanwhile, kids live in these other places. And so that definitely was a good test for me to know, yes, I could survive long term. And hear me when I want to be specific when I'm talking about this. I am a slow traveler. I am not the type of mom traveler that I need to let you know that my kid is 3 and he's already been to 86 countries already. That's not me. And no shade to that at all. God bless those parents that do it. Like, they are on a marathon, and peace be with them. Fun. Furaha, like they say in Tanzania. Happy. Like, but for me, and the way I'm set up and the way that I really need to set my atmosphere where I am with my kids, it's just too taxing for me to do quick travel. I don't think anytime soon I will be traveling across the world for a week or two. Like, if it's like under 3 weeks, it needs to be like domestic for me. That's just the way I'm wired. And so that's mostly what I'm saying about like why I bring the kitchen sink. Now, mind you, if I knew I was going to like Jamaica and staying at Sands, one of those like all-inclusive resort things, of course they have what you need at these places or whatever. But I'm talking about, my husband and I, we go places for a month, 2 months, 2.5 months, working up to going longer. But we go places for that amount of time, and we experience local life. Like right now in Tanzania, we are experiencing life very much like locals. And so now in getting to Tanzania, it was something that we knew that we wanted to do for such a long time. And so here we were, finally like pressing the gas on this thing, right? And so we knew in order to do this, because we were going to be here for almost 3 months, we knew that we had some things that we needed to close out in America, or just tie some loose ends before leaving, like visiting certain family members, because we had already calculated, by the time we came back, that Asante would have already had his first birthday. And so there were certain family members that we needed to see, and yada, yada. So we were like, let's go on a Dees tour. That's my last name. And so we went from Charlotte, North Carolina. We're like, okay, we're going to go to the New Edition concert. We did that. Then we made a stop in Dallas, Texas, where we were going to visit my dad and my sister, my niece and nephew, all of that. And then also celebrate Bridget's 3rd birthday there. And then after that, we needed to go to California, because that's where we just moved from not too long ago. And we just had some loose ends that we needed to close out there, as well as visit my mother and friends. And so here we are on this tour. And so we arrived to Dallas, Texas around about 9 p.m. to go check into our Airbnb. Now, like, this whole team Airbnb or hotel, I have probably been team Airbnb since I've had a child, pretty much, because quickly I realized, like, once having my first kid, like, a hotel was just not set up for a family. Like, with washing bottles and being able to wash clothes and just having diaper explosions, and you need to like you need to like feel like you're in a house. That's why I chose Airbnb. And also too, like I said, also too, because I am a germaphobe, I just felt like hotels really don't be cleaning like that. Like, if y'all ever notice when the cart is passing by on a hotel, you rarely, and in fact, I don't think I've ever seen the comforter on those carts. So for me, it was just like, yeah, no, Airbnb is just a better option for me and my family. I'm also probably also biased to Airbnb because I'm an Airbnb super host. So I've been on both ends of Airbnb. And I've never had a bad experience. I've never had a bad Airbnb experience until this day. So we pull up to the Airbnb. Now, our routine with Airbnb, let me just go back. With planning our trips, I'm usually the itinerary person, like from start to finish, and I love doing it. It's my thing. And so I got a gold star rating with picking Airbnbs because I always pick recognized superhosts. Not only do I do that, but I like read every single review. If someone has like a bad review in like a particular area, like let's say it's about cleanliness, let's use that for example, and more than one person has agreed that there's a cleanliness problem, I don't stay there. So I'm like really picky with Airbnbs. This particular one that I had chose was no different in the reviews. They had like good reviews, yada yada. The pictures looked cool. So anywho, we pull up to the Airbnb. It's probably about 9:30 at night. Our routine, my husband and I, when we pull up to Airbnbs, usually he goes in first. He goes in first to make sure there's no monsters in the closet, nothing crazy, is safe for his family to go, right? So he did that. He comes back out. I notice he has like an odd look on his face. And I'm like, what's good? What's wrong? And he's like, it smells a little funny in there. And I'm like, little funny? Like what? And he's like, kind of like a wet dog. And I'm like, okay. And I remember that I actually did choose a place that accepts animals because I wasn't sure on like that stop in Texas or going to California, like if we were gonna end up leaving our dog in California before we came out of the country. So I was like, anyway, I had selected a place that was dog friendly. We ended up not bringing Tuesday along with us, but that's why this place was dog, whatever. But I've stayed at dog friendly places before, never a problem. But anyway, so I said, okay, now was that it? Otherwise, is it okay? And he's like, yeah, it's okay. Now, if you know my husband, if he says something is just okay, that means I'm going to think it's terrible. So, my doubts had come to the shore. But I went inside to go do my handy dandy sanitation process. So I go in there to go sanitize. As soon as I walk in, I pretty much know we've been duped. And yes, it was the place that I booked, but the pictures were heavily photoshopped, like very photoshopped. Like the walls in the photos looked like super white and freshly painted, where these walls were like dingy and just kind of grimy looking. It just had a dankness to it. It just was dim. The lights were, the vibe, energy of the place even felt off. And so I'm still walking around. I walk to one of the bedrooms and I quickly see that it has like somebody's dried Thai food on there. They're like some Thai noodles that are like dried on there. It was disgusting. So I quickly was like, ain't no way. Left out of there, went in the car, told my husband, like, yeah, babe, okay, we can't stay here. I was shocked. Like, this has never happened to us before. And I've heard people complain about Airbnb, but this was the first time that I experienced it. So I was like, oh my gosh. And I felt so bad because I felt responsible. I had booked this place. So at this point, it's probably about 10 o'clock at night, which is way past my kids' bedtime because it's 10 o'clock at night there in Dallas, Texas. My kids go to bed at 6 p.m. on the East Coast. So it's way past their bedtime. So at this time, they're going ape, especially Bridge, my toddler, who is not having it. He is a very regimented tourist where like bedtime, food time, like it needs to happen at those times. So we're way past that. And so he's going on so bad that now he's agitating the baby. And so they're both screaming in the back. Now, I've been a mom now for 3 years. I hate screaming. And I don't think I'll ever get used to it. You know, my husband is often like, "How are you a mom that just can't handle screaming?" I've definitely heard of those moms that are like, "Oh yeah, I just tune that out. I don't that ain't me. I can't tune it out." Especially when those car acoustics are like going when the screams and shrills are crescendoing off the windows, like that just takes my nerves down to hell. So they're screaming in the back, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, okay, okay, okay. And my husband's driving. I'm trying to get him directions. I don't know what to do because I'm like, it's 10 o'clock at night. I can't quickly like go look through another Airbnb on the app. At this point, I'm like, well, I don't even know about Airbnb in Dallas, Texas, because this one sure was a fail. What do we do? What do we do? And I'm like, my husband's like, we got to go to a hotel. And so I'm like, yeah, I guess we do. We just got to get these kids to bed, like inside. And so immediately in my mind, I'm like, Marriott. Marriott, because that's a trusted source. Like they're safe, they're standardly clean, I guess. And yeah, we're in this like city metropolitan, like kind of upscale side of town. I'm like, yeah, this should be no problem, right? So we pull up into the parking complex. Bridge is screaming. Asante's crying. It's just, yeah, it's a madhouse in the back seat. I tell my husband, please just go inside and find out, do they have available rooms? And like, actually, now that I'm even telling this story, I'm trying to wonder why I didn't just call, like, and inquire. But have y'all noticed these days that like these numbers don't lead you to like the actual place? It leads you to some like global customer service AI person or whatever. Like the days of you just calling a hotel by the number and like a guest services person picking up the phone, that's few and far in between. That's another episode for another day. But anywho, so my husband is like, okay, I'll go inside and inquire about this. And I tell him, you got to take Bridge inside because I can't deal with both screaming kids like at the same time. So take one and I'll deal with the other, at least with Asante. I can nurse him and like, dude, just take Bridge inside. So he pulls Bridge out of the car. Bridge doesn't have on his shoes like any toddler that, you know, is riding in the car for a long time to take off their shoes. And so I can't really remember if I actually voiced it or if I was thinking it, but I was like, his shoes need to be on. We're going into this hotel late at night. Like I said, monster on my back, always being aware of being black in these spaces. I'm like, you can't walk up in there with that boy not having on any shoes, him just barefoot, just in this hotel. And my husband's like, you see how he's acting right now? I'm not about to agitate him anymore. I'm not putting no shoes on. So I'm just like, okay. So he picks Bridge up and just carries him inside as he moseys on to guest services. I sit in the car with the baby. Brandon comes back about, my husband comes back in about 10 minutes or so. Comes back. He's like, yes, they have a available room. He's like, babe, oh my gosh, Bridge was going in. Like, he was just unstoppable. The people tried to offer him cookie. He wasn't having water. He wasn't having a smile. He didn't want it. Like, he just was like, get out of my face. Just, and I'm like, yeah, he's over it and done. Let's just get them inside. So we walk upstairs. We bring our like 5411 bags. Like I said, we're on a tour. We came from Charlotte. Now we're in Dallas. We're on our way to LA. And then we're on our way to Tanzania for 3 months, basically. So we have a lot of stuff. So we walk in immediately when these hotel elevator doors open. I am immersed into the liliest land of white people. Like, it's just white. The walls are white. The skin is white. The floors are white. It's just white, right? So I know our black behinds walking past, like we stick out like a hot pink elephant, right? So I walk up to the desk and there are some black people there, only the workers. Walk up to the desk. It's a black woman. She's like, "Oh, your kids are so cute." Yada yada. A little small talk, whatever. You know, my toddler is still probably crying, but I guess maybe he's calmed down a little bit by now because when he was with my husband, I think he was like screaming for me, and my kid does that. Like if he's with my husband, he wants mama. If he's with me, he wants dad. And I think he just has this thing where he likes his family together, and so we were all together, and so he's still antsy but a little quieter. So I tell the girl, yes, we want to stay just one night. Yes. And so she's like, yeah, that'll be about $624.11. Y'all, I'm so done with the screaming and the like Airbnb nightmare that I just experienced that I didn't even blink. I just gave this chick my card. It's 10 o'clock. I'm just so over it and done with it all at this point that I just hand her my card. Boom. So she gives us the room key. The other guest services person next to her, who also was black, a black man, he asked, "Did you all valet your car?" And we're like, "No, we didn't. We just parked in the structure." So he said, "Oh, give me your keys and I'll valet park your car." We're like, "Okay, cool." We get to the room. Miraculously, the kids go right to sleep. I say miraculously. That's another reason why we usually don't. I say miraculously because another reason we usually do not stay in hotels is because it's one room. It's like my kids go to bed at 6 p.m. My husband and I don't, so it's like very distracting if we still have lights on and stuff to disturb them. But they were so tired that they accepted it. They were like, "We cool with this," so they went to sleep. And yeah, the guest services person came back up to our room with our car key, saying, "Oh, we couldn't find your car." We said, "No worries. Where we park, we don't think we'll be towed or anything. Fine." We went to sleep. It was actually a very peaceful, restful sleep until about 7:45 that morning. 7:45 ish. About 7:45 ish. Bang, 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 bang at the door. My husband quickly shuffles to the door, answers it. He comes back. He's like putting on more clothes, and I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "It's the police. They said they want to talk to me." What? Oh, they're not about to talk to my black husband out in the hallway, unmonitored, with no witness. So I quickly get out of the bed, put my clothes on, making sure not to make too much noise to disturb my children. So we step outside of the room. I still have my foot in the door because you all know how those hotel doors are. They can close and lock on you if you don't have the key. So my husband steps all the way out, and there's like 4 or 5 police officers at the door. One of them for sure pulls my husband down the hall. He's like, can you step down the hall? I want to have a few words with you. I have a few questions." So my husband obliges. Me, I'm in full on mama bear mode. I'm like, "What's going on? What do y'all need? What's the issue? What's up? Speak fast." And there is a black cop and 2 white cops surrounding me. The black cop is going very fast. But I'm like, yeah, we were gonna stay at an Airbnb. That wasn't up to par. Oh, and then I like stopped. I was like, you know what? We don't even like staying at hotels. I think they're dirty. I was like, I actually travel with my own sheets. Like I travel with disposable sheets to put over hotel sheets, because in my mind I'm thinking they are probably thinking we're homeless because we checked into this hotel late at night and we have all these bags. Like maybe they think we don't have like a stable home or something for our kids. I don't know. But so I'm explaining all of that. But anyway, as I'm talking and telling him what's going on, I had kind of like an out of body experience where I'm looking at the situation outside of myself and I notice, wait, he's not making any eye contact. It's like he's barely listening to anything that you're saying. And so I snapped and I was like, what's going on? I was like, you're not even looking at me. Like, tell me what is going on. Because at this point, I'm getting nervous because I'm like, this man isn't looking like he's buying my story. And it's not a story. It's the truth. Why am I being questioned about my own children? And so I'm like, you're not looking at me. You're not making any eye contact. That's when he snapped out of it, because I think he quickly realized, oh, I'm not talking to a criminal. I'm talking to a black mama here. She done asked me to look her in the eye and everything. Because, I mean, come on, what criminal is going to tell a police officer, look me in the eyes when I'm talking to you? What person that's being honest is going to say that? But I'm not even thinking about it that deep. I'm actually just like, yo, like, are we connecting? You're not looking at me. We're talking about my kids. And so, I said, do you want to come inside? And then I think he was shocked that I was so like open the door, like, yeah, what do you need to see? What do you need to check out so we can get this done over real quick? So when they stepped inside, they saw that I had a baby as well. They saw Asante in the packing plate and they were like, oh, you have another one? And I'm looking at them like, yeah, we're a family. And they're like, oh, okay. And this is your son, right? And I'm like, yeah. And I pull out my phone. I'm showing them that I was going to stay at the Airbnb. I show them in my messages that I was like, I had told Airbnb, like, hey, we can't stay here. This place is gross. I was showing them pictures of my own son. And quickly their guard like came way down. Well, the black officer, I'm gonna be honest and say, if that black officer was not there, I'm truly not sure how that situation, and I don't even want my mind to go into those dark corners, right? But his guard completely, like, he just totally took the bulletproof vest off. He was just like, oh my gosh, we're sorry, ma'am. We got a call of concern from the hotel. They didn't really know what was going on. And so then when they called us, we thought maybe this was a connection to a missing kid that, and then they pulled out their phone and showed me a missing black kid. He didn't look like my son, but different day, different episode. Y'all know how that goes. We all look alike, right? So he shows me this boy, and my heart really does go out to this family, this mother. I really chose not to like think about it because I am an empath, and it can go to a really dark place for me when I think about a mother like losing their kid. I can't. So I haven't thought much about it, but my heart certainly does go out to that parent, and my prayers are like, God, miraculously let all be well with that child. But he wasn't my child, and my child had not been kidnapped. And the irony is that just maybe 2 years older than my son, when I was about 5, I thought I had been kidnapped, and now I'm in a position being accused possibly of kidnapping my own son. Crazy. It was all over. It's, they apologized, they left. Marriott did give us back our money. I'm not done with them yet, and it's being worked out. Let's just say that it's being worked out. But that situation, I'm never going to forget that. My husband is never going to forget that. And I want to leave you all with this, especially for those that may want to travel with their children, with their families, and haven't. There is a wave and an influx of like Black people traveling, and definitely there are pages on social media dedicated to like these cool, fancy traveling families, right? And there are beautiful pictures of them standing next to all these global monuments, and they're smiling. They're in matching attire and just smiles galore. Don't get it twisted. I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. It's not easy traveling with children. Don't let anybody fool you. At least it's not easy traveling with my children. I am not a traveling mom because it's tipping through the tulips, traveling through airports and TSA and baggage claim and through border control and all these different places with children. It's not easy. I do it because I don't want my life to be limited because that's what society. Because the beginning of our history here, we weren't even allowed to be a family and have autonomy over our own children because they could be ripped apart from us. Even when we were buying our freedom, if we crossed certain state lines, it's like, where are your papers? And that's how it felt to me in that moment of being questioned about my children. I know for a fact, if I was a white woman named Mindy walking into that hotel with a screaming toddler, if my husband was a white man named Dustin walking in there with a screaming toddler, this would never have happened. Nobody can tell me any differently. We would never have been questioned at all. It's the fact that we were Black, and that's all people need to call the cops. Even your own people will call the cops on you. And so I just want to say, and I want to put that out there, I don't want to create this like false notion that like me traveling is like all these like roses. It's definitely worth it. Like, it's beauty on the other side. When I get to my destination, it's beauty. But I still girl, please listen to me. Just do it afraid. I'm not even gonna say erase your fear. Don't do it, but do it afraid. Do it safely. There are ways you can travel with your children and with your family, and you should do it. And let me tell you, every time I got to my destination, it has been nothing short of beautiful. Even Dallas, Texas, even after that one horrific episode that lasted probably for all about 7 minutes, though it felt like forever. Uh, it was a beautiful trip. We ended up connecting with our family, and we had a beautiful birthday celebration. It was. And a lot of times people ask me, girl, how you travel with your kids? Maybe wait till they're older when it's going to be easier. And it's like, no, my toddler, he's going to be him. It don't matter where I am. If I'm in a Target line, if I'm in rush hour traffic, or I'm on a ferry going to Zanzibar, he's going to be him. And so my husband and I think for the most part have kind of just decided, what is it that Future said? What did he say? You going to cry in the Honda or in the Bentley? That's kind of how I feel about like with my living life as a mom with my kids. Like, I can experience them having all of these moments, because that's really what they are. They're moments. They don't last forever. These tantrums don't last forever. And then we go on and we have a beautiful time. And I know that my kids won't necessarily remember in their mind all the places we've traveled to so far, but guess what? We have pictures. But most importantly, their soul is going to remember. Their spirit is going to remember. It's ingrained in them to travel, to open their minds up to living abroad, that when they are adults, this will be second nature to them. They'll be one with it. And maybe by the time they're adults, they won't even live in America. They'll live elsewhere. And that is my dream for my children.
Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate your ears. Remember to follow Kolor Me Mama with a K on Instagram and YouTube. Sending you love and inspiration. Until next time, Mama, keep coloring outside the lines.